Hey everybody, Dowie here from Ice Cave Radio, and I'm joined by a very special guest today. It's none other than Joe, and he has the auspicious honor of being the best Poe Dameron to play at the Richmond Sector Qualifiers. You made day two, the only Poe to do that, and Poe's a leader that a lot of people have been talking about. I've loved playing it myself too, but it hasn't quite topped out on a lot of tournaments. That said, I think it's a very legit leader, so I want to talk to one of the most successful people yet with that leader in the game and get your take on it. We're going to look at your lists that you took to Richmond, and then we're going to take a look at the lists that you're kind of tinkering with now as we take Poe forward in the meta. So first of all, yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your history with card games, your history with Star Wars Unlimited. Where did you come from coming into this game?
Yeah, this was my first foray into TCGs. So my brother got me started last summer, and so I've slowly been kind of grinding away with the local scene out in Charlottesville, just well outside of Richmond, and they were the ones that helped me craft this list along with my brother, and just kind of been trying to figure out how TCGs work.
Awesome. So you've never played, have you played any other strategic competitive games, any like esports, anything like that? Or is this kind of your first competitive gaming foray?
Yeah, this was my first foray into competitive gaming, and
Wow.
I had not done. This was my first major tournament. I had done showdowns, but I signed up for the event in Richmond. I was like, let's give it a go. Let's see what happens, and it turned out to be a great experience.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Obviously made day two, which is pretty huge in itself. But any other moments, anything else stand out from the weekend for you?
I think overall, just like the people there, like the people I got to play, all great competitors, really great people. Had on day two, my first opponent playing a Cad Bane Tarkentown. After we finished, like he had some great advice for changes that I could make to the deck, and it was just great to talk with people who love the game just as much and who love to just kind of do some deck building.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean the community is definitely the best part of it, I think, right? Where it's like fun to
Mhm.
push yourself, but it's more fun to push yourself when the people around you are doing it in a healthy way too, right? Where everybody kind of wants to see everybody else succeed and you're competing hard, but there's that good vibes going along with it. So the first question I've got for you is why Poe? You know, why Poe in a world where Sabine exists? That's a question I've wrestled with myself. I want to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I think it's. I was looking at what could I take to Richmond, and I didn't want to play control because that's my kind of other go-to. But and then looking at the aggro, I was like, I could play Sabine, but I don't want to play Sabine because everyone who's going to do aggro is going to take Sabine. So I started looking at other leaders, and I was like, Poe is similar enough to Sabine. I can slide in Poe, make some changes to the deck that fit Poe's playstyle more, and I can still get that aggro feeling to it. And I still don't, when I was looking at what was happening in the meta in the week or two prior, no one was really going super space heavy. So that was kind of a real kind of deciding factor there of let's just try to really build on the space piece.
Okay, cool. And you've got a lot of interesting space stuff in there as well. I think the thing that jumps out at me is the Resistance X-Wings, which, get that
Mhm.
buff if they're piloted. But I've always been really hesitant, and a lot of people seem hesitant to put them in just because they are that 2/2. What was your experience with that card in particular? Did it pan out the way you wanted, or did that one not perform as well as you hoped?
I think it's, I think it definitely overperforms
Oh,
because
okay.
it gets overlooked. Yeah, it gets overlooked. If I, what I'd like to do is turn one, I'm dropping either of the A-Wings or Black One, and then turn two, I'm piloting it with Poe, and then I'm dropping the Resistance X-Wing as that
Hmm.
extra play. So that way it's not the first thing on the board because it's going to get taken out a little too quickly. So that way it's setting up for that turn three. I can jump Poe between ships and then I'm loading up more on damage there. So it's not the ideal turn one play, but if I
Hmm.
have to, I'll do it because then it's all right. It becomes a 5/4 if I don't deal with it right away.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I feel like two health ships in general have kind of had a little bit of a resurgence with like the Phoenix Squadron A Wing and stuff. Because when it comes to a lot of these decks that run Ping and Tarkentown, your Quinlans, your Cad Banes, it really doesn't matter if your ship has 3 HP or 2 HP or 1 HP. It's probably not going to
Hmm.
survive the first turn or two anyway. So going for the offensive value versus the defensive value has been kind of a little shift I've seen in some of these that makes a lot of sense. But just overall, with the list that you took to Richmond, we're going to get into the updates soon. But what broad overview? What worked? What didn't with this list on the weekend? Or I guess let's focus on what really worked for you on the weekend with the deck.
Yeah, I think what worked really well is the early pressure in space. So the ideal situation was where I'd be getting two ships out by turn two, and then I'm able to build that pressure, and they're trying to take out the space units. But by the time we're getting to where I can flip Poe, I'm able to then switch to pressure on the ground, and that's a strategy that I really had a lot of success with. Is they're focusing trying to match me in space, and then I pivot to ground, and then I'm able to kind of finish things off with Poe and Wrecker coming in.
Yeah, it's interesting when I look at this list too, because I see you've got things like the Sindari Peacekeeper, you've got things like Cam Syndulla in the main board, and that kind of leads me to my next question, where as far as the cards you've chosen to put in the main board versus the sideboard, how did you kind of come to those decisions? Because Cam in the main board is interesting because we do see a good amount of ramp in the meta, but in retrospect, is there enough to have main board Cam? Would you still do it in the? I guess we'll find out when we look at the other list, but I'm curious about that one in particular.
Yeah, that was one I found out myself resourcing more often than not. I only had two Sabine matchups, and I was in both situations. I was like, I don't want to ECL Cam into Sabine. Like,
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to keep the pressure on in space because like most Sabine lists are running maybe 12 space units.
Hmm.
And so if I'm able to keep that pressure up, then it's like they're not going to be able to match me there.
Makes sense. I think the other card that
hmm
really kind of stands out when you look at this list is the Legal Authority, which I have to say I've been a fan of
Yeah.
Legal Authority for a long time. I loved running it in my Boba 2 heroism aggression lists for the little bit of
hmm
buffing that happened there. But this is a deck too where Poe can suddenly jump up the power of something, and then maybe the Legal Authority comes in. Is that generally what happened with it, or how did Legal Authority play out for you?
Yeah, it was. I love it. It's a great card. It really changes the math on the table because if I love playing it on a ship with Chewie on it because
Hmm.
then it's like you're not getting that unit back unless you're playing No Glory, Traitorous, or like it's going to take a lot of work for you to get that unit back. It was in there to deal with Luke Green decks because Sentinel just slowed me down way too much.
Hmm.
And so I was like, all right, what can I do to deal with Sentinels? And so it's like I only really needed to happen for a brief moment in time. Um, and so really its legal authority is that, all right, I don't want to use a removal piece on that because that's going to take up too many resources. I'm going to use legal authority so then I can jump Poe around some more or get something else down on the table while still removing something that's problematic.
Yeah, people focus so much on the ability, but they forget that there's like an extra +2 health that your ship gets with
Yeah.
the upgrade as well, which is a big difference right now in the really tight space numbers that we have, I think. I
hmm
really love the Gorilla Attack Pod in the sideboard. That was one of my favorite cards back in like when I played Sabine Cunning way back when. Did it ever come in, or
hmm
did it kind of just chill in the sideboard?
It came out in only one match, sadly,
Okay.
but it came out in a in my second match of Boss Blue to close out a game. I was like, all right, it's I sideboarded in for the second game, and that allowed me to win the game rather than like, all right, can I draw the right card to be able to kind of clean things up when I had him at like 29 health.
Okay, that makes sense. What ended up being
Mhm.
like the hardest thing to play into with this list on the weekend?
I think thinking through the matchups, the one that was the most kind of like neck and neck was a Han 1 green. That
Hmm.
one was my opponent was very skilled, very good. And there were some decision points at times where it's like it could go either way, some misplays that like change things. But the hard part is dealing with that turn one Falcon because
Yeah.
that can set you back. And so I keep going back and forth on like, do I include R2s in a list? Because if I can get a turn one play, they go into Falcon. I'm like, all right, if I can get R2 then on that ship, most times like they're gonna lose their Falcon too,
Hmm.
as well if they swing into me. So that's where it's like with the changes I've been making to the list, it's like, all right, do I want R2 in there? Or do I not?
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Well, do you have any final comments about this list before we move on?
I think the biggest thing was the Sundari Peacekeepers. I'd love to keep them in there. I keep going back and forth. Do I keep them? Do I not? But I think for Richmond, this was a really good list. I didn't pilot it the best because I had some matchups where I was like, oh, I need to play this differently, but I didn't have the time to really figure out how to do those
Hmm.
matchups. I think that's like I didn't have much experience into Cad Banes with this list, and that was challenging. But now it's like I've been getting some practice into that, so it's like I think still a very viable list. But with the Res of Data Vault, that's it's raising some questions.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly seem to have enough prep to do well. I mean, day two with that number of players is no slouch, and I feel like every time I play in like a PQ or something, I run into a deck where I'm like, why did I not practice against this more? I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing in this
Hmm.
matchup. It seems like no matter what you do, you always those matchups are always there. But let's take a look at the new version of this. And we've been discussing this a little bit on the Discord. Shout out to the Ice Cave Radio Discord, by the way. Join that and join in the discussion because it's a lot of fun if you haven't already. But a lot of pros have been doing this, trying out Data Vault. And obviously, this
Hmm.
first lets you put in 3 timely interventions, which makes up for the lack of ECL. But what else does Data Vault give you, in your opinion? And kind of after a little bit of testing, where are you at on it?
Yeah, I'm 50-50 on it right now. I'm still workshopping it with my brother, with my local group in Charlottesville. Um, it starts to feel more of like a mid-range deck, and I think that's a problem
Yeah.
I'm trying to sort out is like how do I keep the aggro feeling? Because it's really ECL really allows you to kind of take control of that board, and so it's I am trying to balance the aggression with Poe's early turns versus how do I get control in that mid game so that way I can kind of continue on that path of like all right, I'm continuing that pressure rather than fizzling out as I start to lose those space units.
Well, it's interesting because you've added in a lot of things that I like and that I've been wanting to put in
Hmm.
Poe, like for instance the snap, right? Because that right away
Yeah.
theoretically lets you search for your 5-drop Poe, which is such a crucial card in that matchup. You know, we talked about this a little bit on the Discord too, so I'm going to be repeating something that you and I have talked about, but I'm saying it for the
Yeah.
video. Is that with testing too, I'm very much 50-50 on it myself as well. I'm almost leaning a little bit back towards the ECL for the one reason that Data Vault works really well in Sabine because she's always going to have a damage ping, right? No matter the board
Yeah.
state, she's always going to be able to get base damage in. And that's not the case with Poe. You need a ship. He needs to have not been epic actioned out as a ground unit, right? You can get just kind of stuck with nothing to do, which does push you back more towards the ECL. I need to get the game done quicker. But that said, I think it's still very much worth testing. I'm definitely not ready to make a decision on it yet. And speaking of Snap, how has that been working? Kind of like we theorized, right? Where it's been good at finding the pose that you need.
Yeah, I think I think every day I do a few matches with Data Ball, I do a few matches with ECL,
Hmm.
and that's I'm trying to figure out like what feels better. But thinking about Snap specifically, he's the best addition that I made to the deck, and I think he really changes the tempo because then I can either what I prefer to do is on resource 3 is drop Snap down to the ground if I have Poe in hand. So that way, then Poe's coming out at 4. What's my opponent's response to that? It's like you just have a massive unit that's coming out of turn early.
Yeah.
And like I can ECL that if I need to, or I can really hold on to them until I get to 5 resources. I swing with Snap, then I can timely Poe in instead, and then save the ECL for Wrecker. So it's I think Snap opens up way more options in terms of gameplay and the combos.
It's super interesting. I feel like he's a card that now that I've sort of seen it in action, I feel like I need to include it in like the ECL version too. Is he in your ECL version as well?
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
Snap is, I think, a must include, just
Hmm.
given like the number of resistance cards you can just slot into Poe.
That makes sense. The other one I was curious about was the System Shock. That's one that some people have tried, but I feel like it's
Yeah.
dropped out of a lot of lists. But you really like it. There's a big smile on your face right now. So
Yeah.
what's tell me about System Shock?
Oh, I love it as it's a great counter against Vader 4. Because if
Oh,
he's
yeah.
piloting stuff on TIE fighters, I'm able to knock it off and get rid of the TIE fighter. It's also very much a I love it against Sabine, and if I play the disabling thing early, and I'm holding on to that system shock on their flip turn and they upgrade, and then it's like, all right, you just wasted that General's Blade or Dark Saber,
Hmm.
and I can get that with the System Shock. And the only downside is it doesn't get leaders, but I think overall it's a very unexpected card for upgrade removal, and it's also very cheap for a one cost.
Yeah, paying one for that, I think, especially, is what really always made it sort of jump out at me a little bit. I noticed
Hmm.
the Sundari Peacekeepers are still in there. Is it something? Do you ever feel good about just plunking them down without timely, or do you just only ever use it with timely intervention?
I plunk them down, especially when I need them to soak damage, but I'm thinking I might drop them from this version at the
Hmm.
moment and put Leia back in.
Okay.
Just because I think, yeah, I think the problem is it's like they're great for sucking up damage, but they aren't great for when you need to take out units. And that's what something Leia was really good about in Richmond is like if I need to, like if I have R2 on a ship and then I'm able to turn two, then have play Leia to swing for a
Hmm.
little extra and do some damage and heal. I then can have Leia then help him clean up the ground. Whereas the Sindari, that's more of a defensive card in my opinion. And so it's like great for healing, but it's a little too reactive, whereas Leia's a bit more proactive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other one that I know everybody's going to ask about if I don't talk about it is Sabine's Masterpiece, right? Because that was such an impactful
Mhm.
card in the finals of Lille recently, and just a lot of tournaments in general. It's been working very well in Sabine. Why no Sabine's Masterpiece quite yet in this list?
I think it's thinking about what I've got there in the three drops. And it's like with Blue Leader and the Falcon, it's like, all right, what do I shave and where?
Mm,
And like Sabine's Masterpiece is great, but then I'm also taking a timely away from something on the top end. But it's also, I think, looking at how Sabine's Masterpiece has been used, I think it could be really good here in this list. It's a matter of all right, what do I shave and where? Do I shift the Poe pilot to the sideboard in that case and save him for the control matchups, or do I drop something else somewhere else to really make that room for the masterpiece? Because I definitely agree. I think it should be in the list, but it's a matter of like what gets cut.
yeah, I hear that. I would probably cut the Sundaris to give it a try if it were me,
Yeah.
but I haven't played this as much as you have, so take what I've said with a grain of salt. But it seems like it operates best when you've got another green unit out there so that you can do the ambush and
Hmm.
then put an XP on something too. So it's like trying to build the deck in a way where that scenario is going to occur more often than not too.
Yeah.
Looking at the sideboard here, kind of tell me about the sideboard. Obviously, the Data Vault does push it into a mid range. That does give us the opportunity to play Crate Dragon, but that seems like we're going late if we're playing Crate Dragon.
Yeah.
Has it ever gone that late for you yet?
No, not that late. Normally, it's either I'm gonna fizzle out and lose before I'm thinking about slotting in the crates, or it's like I'm cleaning things up before that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the big things that I love in the sideboard are the War Juggernauts. That is something I wished I had put in the sideboard for Richmond. I think I had one in there,
Mm-hmm.
but I wish I had three of because I came up against. I think it was three Vader four yellows, and every time I was like, I wish I had the War Juggernaut to deal with all these ties.
Right.
Um, and so I think it's War Juggernaut, like it'll depend on what the meta's looking like. If Vader 4 continues to see a rise, then I want the War Juggernaut in there, but he might be one that's like getting slotted out. Um, Open fires are in there as like additional removal piece as well, because I've been playing against a lot of Ray Data Vault, and that
Oh
is
yeah.
I'm finding to be a very problematic deck to play against as Poe. Just because with her buffing her units, that's hard for Poe to deal with at times.
Right. Not to mention all the healing too. Don't get me started, man.
Hmm.
Oh. Uh, are there any other cards that we haven't talked about yet that you want to mention?
I don't think so off the top of my head. I think the big one is legal authority. I think for
Mm.
Poe, any pilot deck really benefits from legal authority just because you're going to have more power on a unit for a cheaper cost. And so you're able to clean up a lot more problematic pieces on your opponent's side of the table.
Yeah, I was playing against a pilot Luke list that was running Take Captive, and I was like, man,
Hmm.
capturing my ships really causes problems for me. So that was
Yeah.
when I played my local last week. It was the only match I lost was to a pilot Luke that kept using Take Captive on me. And I'm like, legal authority is an elegant way, I think, to do it in a post specific way, do that capture kind of thing. So I like that
Yeah,
inclusion there.
definitely.
Before we sort of conclude everything, I'm curious what you've learned as far as just general Poe tips and tricks. Like if somebody is looking at trying this list out or trying an ECL list out, just playing the leader in general, what would be your top suggestions to them to keep in mind during games?
Yeah, I think the turn one is the make or break point, and you don't want to be dropping your best two resource card that turn
Mm,
ideally. And that's something that I learned round eight in Richmond. I was playing a Quinlan, and I played my best turn two resource card, and then I'm like, all right, it gets taken out. I'm like, what do I do now?
mm-hmm,
And so it's really when in facing Quinlan, Cad Tarkentown, or Ray Tarkentown, it's like it's all about baiting out the Tarkentown early on, so that way you're not going to be losing out on like a buffed up Poe unit later on. Um, and so it's like, what do I need to do to bait out the Tarkentown? And maybe it's like I'm having to play a ship and an R2 on it to get them to take it out. But at the end of the day, I'd rather be Tarkentown turn one rather than like turn four, right? As I'm
yeah.
about to make some big plays there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And getting the Tarkentown out of the way too ensures that your 5 drop Poe a little bit later on is going to maybe see some better results as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else jump out as far as just general good Poe practices? We'll say.
Yeah. I think it's about when having Chewy in the list, you got to balance when do I want to play Chewy on turn two versus when do I want to get more ships out and start Poe to jump around.
Hmm.
Because a lot with the Traitorous being in nearly every green deck you're going to face, it's a balance of do I want to risk Chewy being out there? Do I not? He's one that I am starting to think of. Does he need to be in the sideboard or does he
Mm-hmm.
need to be main board? Because I'm not liking all that tech against Chewy I'm starting to see, especially when facing green villain decks. It's gotten a bit annoying at times, but that's why the system shocks are in there to be able to take Chewy back right away.
Oh, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that's a good
Hmm.
counter to Chewie being lured to the dark side all the time lately. I feel like that's funny. All right. Cool. Well, I just gotta say, like Poe is such a fun leader, and I've been enjoying him
Hmm.
so much, and I think he's right on, as Krennic would say, right on the verge of greatness, right? Where I feel like we're very close to finding a very powerful, polished list that like once someone like yourself gets enough reps on it, we're gonna see Poe's winning tournaments. I feel like it's never gonna be the S tier leader, in this set, but I still firmly believe it could be one of the strongest with the right list and the right pilot. So I think this is getting there, and I just want to get the information out there. Help more people get started with Poe, and yeah, push that leader forward a little bit. So before we close out, any final comments about the list? Anything else? Any shout outs you want to
I
make
think
too?
Yeah, I think final thoughts before shoutouts. I think I might be moving back towards ECL. I'm gonna
Okay.
try this version out. I've got a PQ in a week and a half, so really by this weekend I'm trying to make that decision. Is Data Vault worth it with Poe or not? That's so this coming weekend is gonna be the make or break for Data Vault or ECL. But I think what I'm finding is that Poe ECL can still handle its own against other Data Vault decks, with a few exceptions out there. Because with the Rise of Kira, that's been a good matchup with Poe ECL.
Hmm.
Um, I need more reps into Sabine Data Vault with Poe ECL, but I think Poe can handle it depending on the amount of restores. So that's why the Ray Data Vault deck is rather scary currently, in my opinion. Um, but in terms of shout out to my brother. He's the one that really got me started. And he like we text multiple times a week. I send him a list. I'm being like, "What's this? What do you think of this? Should I change that?"
Hmm.
So he's been a great sounding board. And then my local group in Charlottesville, uh, they've been great in helping me learn how to play the game and allowing me to just like play numerous rounds with decks into theirs and just really helping me fine tune things. We got a great local scene. It's a smaller group, but like we've got everyone who plays at various skill levels or and whatnot. Like we got this past Sunday we had a solid group of like 6 kids who joined us
Nice.
for a little May 4th tournament. So we got a really good local scene where we love to play and help each other grow as players.
That's great. I mean, that's what you need, right? I mean, a lot of the best TCG players came out of like small, like rural Midwest backgrounds and things like that too. So it's not the size of the group; it's the dedication and the quality of the players, I think. So, congrats on your great run at Richland. Richmond rather. Once again, thanks for joining us to chat about Poe a little bit. And like Palpatine said, you know, we will watch your career with great interest. So definitely keep us updated on the Discord. And
Will
if you
do.
want to stay up to date with those updates, go to icecaveradio.com as well and click the Discord link to join too. But yeah, thank you so much, Joe, for joining us. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody.